There is just one reality left. We are here and it is now. You get hold of that and hang on to it, or you might as well be dead.
Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we will have live viewer call-ins via Skype pretty much any time that you want. We will have the current Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live, virus statistics. We'll talk about how Trump's impeachment is utterly unconstitutional. And as a result of something that went on yesterday, we will be talking about Gina Carano of Star Wars: The Mandalorian. We may also, if we have time, get into a bit of an autobiographical discussion of myself. This is, of course, a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via Skype, you're free to talk with me about anything that you want via chat. You can ask me any question that you like, whether it's political, social, the virus whose name I can't mention without my channel and my videos getting deranked even more than they already are, the United States Civil War II, which I continue to believe we are on track for, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal subjects that I won't get into, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I'll get to as many viewers as I possibly can, with the understanding that I don't want my stream to go much longer than 3 hours because I'm an old man and my lower back arthritis starts to hurt. Now, if you'd like to call in to me to the show, I'm doing this via Skype. And since I don't really want to give out all of my Skype information in public, I'd like to handle it this way. If you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information, and I'll Skype you back. You can then talk to me about anything that you want. You can tell me I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm a complete jerk, doesn't matter. So again, if you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information, and I'll Skype you back. That email address again is callin@sylranch.tv. Hey, Drop of Truth, how's it going? Has the U.S. Constitution died? Well, interestingly enough, I have a whole section on that very subject. It seems Congress no longer required. Yup, Biden merely writes more executive orders at the behest of those truly in power. I don't know who is actually in power necessarily, but he's just bypassing the legislative branch entirely. One hopes that they would, somebody would challenge it, because I think the Supreme Court might be in a position to strike them down, but they're not going to. So while we wait for a few more people to come in, we will answer the question that no one has asked: what are the virus statistics for Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live? Source for this always is the City of Lincoln / Lancaster County Health Department website. There's a great website for it below. I always have it linked to. And our current statistics for this week. Our population, as always, remains roughly constant at 323,862, probably a little more than that. The total Lancaster County number of tests administered is 166,598, which is up about, 1,310 from last week. But this number is not particularly representative of anything, because if you get, say, a test that may be indeterminate or one that's positive, but they give you a second one just to make sure they don't have a false positive, so those numbers don't really represent much of anything. The total number of Lancaster County positive tests is up to 27,322, which is up all of 364 from last week. This continues a trend of decreased positive tests from week to week. I mean, we got more, but the number of new ones is going down. The total number of vaccine doses at this time is roughly 50,300, which was up 19,200 from last week. Given all the other stats and rates of increase and things that we've been seeing since I've been tracking this, we would have to say the vaccine has yet to have the slightest impact on anything. Total number of Lancaster County deaths is up to 210, which is up 8 from last week. This represents a continuation of our very modest increases that generally have gone down over time in terms of increases. Deaths as a percentage of total tests is 0.126%, up 0.004% from last week, which is statistically identical and has been for quite some time. Deaths as a percentage of positive cases is up to 0.769%, which is up 0.02% from last week. But again, statistically identical pretty much for weeks now. I was unhappy when it went above 0.3 after last summer, but, we're still looking at 99% chance of survival. 99.3% chance. Deaths as a percentage of our total population is 0.0648%, which is up 0.0025% from last week. Statistically, this is identical since the pandemic started, i.e., there is no real change. It is statistically insignificant because more people die of misadventure, as heart attacks, doing stupid things, drunk drivings, car accidents. More people die of that than since the entire pandemic began every year. Slipping over to my chat, Drop-a-Tooth says the Supreme Court is now an afterthought. Yeah, it's kind of come postly. Oh, you'll drag some people in via Twitter. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Always appreciate more viewers, the better. I always want to reiterate what I've heard from my healthcare professionals within the last month, which is that our press is reporting here in Lincoln, Nebraska, that our hospitals are overflowing with cases, but every single one of our hospital virus wards are exactly 100% empty. This is from various nurses and healthcare professionals that I've talked to within the last couple of weeks. Nobody's there. Not surprising, since we have no real, problem here in Lancaster County, Lincoln, and never have. As always, nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. As always, never rely on the press for any source of information. Instead, rely on police and first responder frequencies. Always have these linked to below. Always scrolls past in my lower third. Try broadcastify.com if you want to see it on the web, linked to below. Or you can use the Scanner Radio mobile app, which is also linked to below. Or you can also rely on citizen journalists who stream from breaking events, but preferably the ones who just point their cameras and shut up, because then they allow you to come to a conclusion about what you're seeing rather than having some talking head who is just free associating telling you what to think. Because nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. For the last 41 years, I have engaged in a masochistic hobby of debunking the press. And I have an open challenge to anyone who might ever even think about watching this show. If you'd like to see me debunk something live, send me something that's, something I can get to on the web that's print. It needs to be print so I can kind of put it up here. But you send it to me, and I will show you how I debug things. I will not read it in advance. I will just debunk it cold right here on the show. Please do send it to me, because the last time I did it, I debunked a weather report. So, Trump's impeachment. This was something that was a foregone conclusion from the moment that it happened. Drop2 says 13 new, actually old from the previous Kobe scare. Cases in Melbourne. Victoria, the Premier Daniel Andrews has shut down the whole state for 5 days. Third wave as predicted here. Well, considering how they've managed to completely destroy the world economy, I don't think anything should have been done anymore. I don't think a single thing should have ever been done. So, Trump's impeachment. It's unconstitutional by any sane reading of that document. Let me read to you what the Constitution has to say about impeachment. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 of the United States Constitution states, "The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment." That's all it says about impeachment on the House side. Johnny Arcade says, "I'll be sending you all of the liberal BS on climate change for debunking." Feel free. I'm be happy to do it. It's not like it's hard, especially about climate science. To be perfectly honest, I have a video out there that says climate science is not science. Where as a scientist, because that's what I am, I walk through how the present climate science does not in any way follow the scientific method. And so therefore it isn't science, it's rather a religion. And nothing that comes of it needs to be taken seriously because it is not a science. To get a science, you have to use the scientific method. And if you don't have the scientific method, you don't have a science, you have a religion. In any case, on to the rest of the Constitution and what it says about impeachment. Article 1, Section 3, Clauses 6 and 7 of the Constitution state, the Senate shall have the sole power to try impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than the removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the parties convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. Article 2, Section 4 states, the President, Vice President, and all civil offices of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. The reason that this is clearly and obviously unconstitutional to try the president is simply this. Donald Trump is no longer the president. It's that simple. He is no longer the president. He was the president when he was impeached in the House, but by the time it got to the Senate, he is no longer the president. The Constitution states you're trying the president. He's not the president anymore. It is unconstitutional by any sane reading of the document that I just read, the relevant portions to you from, totally unconstitutional to bother to even think about doing any kind of trial. He is not the president anymore. He just became he has become non-triable in the Senate. If they'd wanted to try him, they would have needed to do it like the day after, called a special session of the Senate because they were, shut down until almost he was gone. And they would have had to come back for a special session and then try him. Trying him now is totally and completely 100% unconstitutional by any sane reading of that document. QED. It's just that simple. Furthermore, trying him is a very bad legal precedent because you're saying, okay, it's all right to try someone who, or for that matter, potentially even impeach them, since they're basically one half of each coin, one side of the same coin. So you're saying that it's okay to impeach and try a president after they have left office. So why stop with Trump? Why don't we do it with Obama? Or Nixon, or Reagan, now that they're dead, why not? Or Carter, for that matter. Why not do it with any former president? If it's possible to do it with Trump, it follows, logically, it sets a legal precedent that it's possible to do it with any former president. Trump is an ex-president. He is a former president. He cannot now be tried. If you want to get him on something, it's real simple. You don't have to try him in the Senate because it's unconstitutional. All you have to do is bring him up on charges in the criminal system. We're not talking about anything that's complex here. There are still laws that govern this. It doesn't have to be something that comes from the Senate. There are lots and lots of laws. I now, having listened to and watched some videos by actual real live attorneys, I think it's probably highly unlikely that you would get a court to convict him on what they want to get him on, which is, incitement to riot or incitement to insurrection or something like that. From what I've been watching of actual real live attorneys who can give a informed opinion about this, in prior cases, the courts have given quite a lot of leeway to political speech. And because Trump had specifically said that he did not want any violence while he was talking up in front of people, and that he wanted it to be peaceful while he was standing up there talking in front of people, I think listening to what these actual attorneys had to say, I think you would have a hard time actually convicting him for something in a court system, which is where this belongs. But for me personally, it's kind of a, it's we're into new territory here. We've never had a situation where a president would spend years, months, kind of riling up. Sorry about that. Apparently, I just disconnected for no apparent reason. I wonder if I am pissing off the YouTube gods about what I'm talking about. The last time I did this, I was pissing off the YouTube gods. We'll see what happens. Let me go over and look at my chat here. Johnny Arcade it's a lose-lose for conservatives. They're using impeachments, so if he isn't convicted, then they can frame all of the senators who voted against it as supporting insurrectionists, and if they do, if they do convict, they can frame the entire Republican Party as a problem. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, ever since Nixon, the Republicans have been the whipping boys. That's all there is to it. They will never stop being the whipping boys until such time as en masse they decide to stand up and not allow this to be done to them anymore. But they will never stand up. The Republicans have a long, long history throughout my lifetime of somehow grasping defeat from the jaws of victory. It's amazing to me. They'll be right in a position where they can actually do something and then screw it up every single time. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. Drop 2 says, agree with my statement on Twitter. When have you ever known Disney to be original? Snow White, Pinocchio, etc., all from old fables. Yes, I'm going to talk about that, what I suggested on there as well when I get to talking about Gina Carano. Snow White was originally known as Snowdrop. Well, I'm not even worried so much about that when it comes to that. But again, let me stick a pin in that. I'll come back to that when I talk about Gina Carano. In any case, when we get into, if in case it dropped off and I'm not sure where it decided to freeze on me and shut up, YouTube gods, I'm sorry if I'm pissing you off. But it seems to me a very, very poor precedent to set if you're going to impeach a former president. If you're going to try him, it needed to be during the time that he was still in office. Now that he's not in office, he's not the president. The Senate clearly does not have any constitutional basis by which to try him. If they wanted to try him, they should have done it like the day after they got the articles of impeachment, while he was still president. Now that he's not, what do you do next? Do you try Carter? Do you try Obama? They're former presidents. They're all former presidents. It sets a very, very bad legal precedent to be able to do this. It's just a really bad idea. Drop it says, you cannot impeach a citizen. Yes, Donald Trump is now a private citizen. When he was impeached, because it's a two-part process, House impeaches, and then the Senate tries him. When he was impeached, he was in fact President of the United States. He is now a private citizen and therefore does not fall under the jurisdiction of the Senate anymore. If you want to get him, what you need to do is just take him to court. Charge him with, I assume that there are federal laws against doing what is supposedly that he did. Take him to court, charge him there. I think what I started to say when I got cut off is we're in weird virgin territory here because we've never seen before a situation where the president or anyone else had access to social media and so therefore didn't spend 4 years to at least a couple of months before the event in question, kind of riling up his supporters. Now, I said at the time, you have to remember, I am not a Republican nor a Democrat. I am a libertarian. And when I look at the history of everything Trump's done, it sure seems to me like he had some part in kind of fanning the flames. Now, could you actually get him on it in court? Not according to what I've been watching in terms of real attorneys, saying, okay, well, if you look at other things, because other people have actually done stuff way worse than this, not the president, but other people. And the courts have generally been given it a wide latitude as protected political speech. So, you might take him to court on that. You might win, you might not. I kind of doubt it from what they've said. But right now, the federal government has no hold on him. He's not a president anymore. You have to take him to court and charge him like any other private citizen. But they're not going to do that, and they're going to set a very bad precedent, and that means that we could conceivably, impeach and convict Obama or Carter or Bush 1 or Bush 2, anybody that's still alive. Hell, why not, do it to dead presidents? Why don't we impeach FDR? It gets ridiculous after that. You're saying, thankfully, drop of truth, that these men will all be tried before God and not man. If so, that's nice, but it doesn't do me any damn good down here on Earth. I need every last one of these scumbags to be rounded up. And that's kind of brings me to my next point. When we get into some of this, ultimately it doesn't matter beyond a certain point because the Constitution is, in fact, dead. The Constitution has been dead for all of my lifetime. It has simply taken this long for it to kind of catch up to the obvious. The Constitution is quite literally dead. No one cares about it now, except as, doing some lip service to some part of it that they think might get them some voters or some support. As I've said in other streams and in other videos,
and we are going
in
to
fact,
say
the Constitution
Merry
did not last
Christmas
more
again.
than about 18 months.
Merry Christmas.
From its
So Merry
ratification
Christmas.
until the Whiskey
Happy New
Rebellion.
Year, but
What
Merry
happened in that
Christmas.
time was a bunch of Pennsylvania farmers had realized there was a big cash crop in taking some of their, grain and turning it into a somewhat more volatile liquid form. But then the federal government came in and with no power of taxation tried to tax them. And they rebelled because they said, hey, wait a minute, isn't this just what we fought a revolution to get away from? Unfortunately, that rebellion was put down, and from that moment on, unconstitutional taxation has been with us ever since, and has led to the growth of the giant central government of which we're aware today. A number of presidential administrations after that came my favorite statesman of all time, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was given the opportunity to more than double the land area of the United States by buying a big chunk of it called the Louisiana Purchase from the French for an incredibly tiny price. It would be an incredibly tiny price even if you took, I've forgotten what the exact amount is, it was only in the millions of dollars. At that time, if you adjusted it today, it's going to be quite a lot more, but still, when you consider that you're looking at a gigantic swath of the country, that you would be more than doubling the entire size of the U.S., it is a song. It was utterly a song. The problem is, there is no constitutional authority to add territory to the United States. I think it was envisioned at the time that people who lived in areas that were bordering to the United States, if they wanted to join, they would do it out of because they wanted to, just voluntarily. And so they didn't think there would be any need for something like that. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about adding territory to the United States. President Jefferson buying this territory was not constitutional. And so to get around this, Jefferson tried very hard to get a constitutional amendment that would allow him to do that. But he couldn't get it done. It tried and tried, but they just wouldn't do it. So he said to himself, probably the same thing I would under those circumstances, which was just, screw it. I could double the size of the United States, more than double its size for a song. Picking this up from the French. I'm just going to do it. And unfortunately, that set a bad precedent. And he, in fact, himself said that it strained the Constitution to a breaking point. So, even my favorite politician, my favorite statesman of all time, Thomas Jefferson, man most responsible for the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, said that the Constitution was broken during his administration. Fast forward a bit to Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Good thing. One should never confuse what I'm about to say with that very positive thing. Obviously, it is wholly immoral to own human beings. Just plain immoral on the most abhorrent level. So having rid of that was a very, very good thing. By the same token, in fighting the Civil War, President Lincoln took what had been a bunch of sovereign states and turned it into a nation, which was then controlled centrally from Washington, D.C. What you have to understand is under the Constitution, every individual state is its own sovereign entity. It's rather like what the EU was supposed to be, right? You had your individual countries that were members of the EU so they could free trade with each other and agree on certain general common principles. That's what the United States is under the Constitution. Each state is its own sovereign nation that then band together so that we can have free trade between the states and agree on certain things like presenting a unified front and how we do that in terms of external war. The background sounds a little loud. Let me drop my... Tell me if it gets better. Hearing is this fan that I have on myself, which I kind of don't dare turn off. Let me know if that sounds better, Dalton. Thank you. Let me know. Can you hear me at all at this point? Oh, I see what I've done wrong. Frack.
We're going to be saying...
Frack. Let me drop this out here. Let me go back. Okay, sorry about that. Don't know how much you didn't hear about that. Let's see. Somebody tell me where I started to become inaudible, and I'll go back to that little part of my history lesson. Drop It 2 says, "Oh, Gloria, comfort and joy." Oh, I screwed up. I screwed up on the background, and it was showing things that I didn't even want to see. So I'm sorry about that. Guru 63, why is it racist phobic to express conservative feelings and heroic to express liberal feelings over the same issue? Why can't it be equal expressions are treated equally? I assume you're talking about Gina Carano. Let me put a pin in that. I have a whole section on her. Yeah, Drop It Truth. That's my fault. My screw up. I love when I do that. I had forgotten there was sound on that, and I didn't watch it all the way through, so I didn't realize that it was showing stuff in the background that I didn't really want to show. I stole that from elsewhere. So, Lincoln. Started getting on Lincoln. Okay, so Lincoln. What Lincoln had done was taken, let me check my levels here real quick. Okay, what Lincoln did was he took what were individual sovereign states. That is, each state in the United States is, under the Constitution, its own sovereign nation with its own laws internally. The laws that are delegated to the federal government are very, very few. And then lousy when I started at Lincoln. Okay. The laws delegated to the federal government are supposed to be very, very few. And they are supposed to basically, the first 10 amendments and most of the rest are guaranteeing our individual liberties. They're saying that government can't screw with these and the states themselves can't screw with them. But other than that, laws and stuff, you don't see like murder laws on the federal level, right? Murder laws are left to the states. So states are their own individual nations that are then banding together in order to form a union that really just says, okay, we're going to have individuals, free trade between the states. We can't have one state tariffing another state or taxing another state's good. Free trade between all these states. And we will put up a unified front in the event of a war or something like that. Here's how we do that. So what Lincoln did was, in fighting the Civil War, he changed all of that. He took what had been these individual nations that had a general kind of, working group agreement on a few things and turned them into one giant country that was then ruled completely from a centralized location, and that was Washington, D.C. In so doing, he laid the seeds for the complete destruction of the Republic, which is what we've had now. Now, it never even is a question. There used to be a phrase when I was growing up still that was, don't make a federal case out of it. That meant, don't take something that is minor, that's local, that's between you and I, and say, let's take it to the federal government to take care of. That was what these originally meant. We had states that were individual sovereign nations, and we didn't take things to the federal government because the federal government isn't supposed to have very much power. It's supposed to have very, very little power at all. Most of what it's supposed to do is guarantee your rights. That's all that it's really supposed to do. Guarantee your rights, make sure there's free trade, and if we have a war, we put up a united front against it if the war is external. Drop 2 says Lincoln was killed because his creation of his own currency, the greenback. They had tried to assassinate Old Hickory Jackson for the same reason. Can't mess with moneylenders. The GameStop shenanigans lately are proof of that. Yes. Well, you know, what you have to remember is everybody tends to, if you know history, which they aren't teaching anymore, but if you do know history, you know that when John Wilkes Booth killed President Lincoln, he leapt down onto the stage and yelled out, "Sic semper tyrannis." While it's true that John Wilkes Booth was a sympathizer of the Confederacy, the reason that he said "Sic semper tyrannis," which is Latin for "thus always to tyrants," was that he believed that Lincoln had become a tyrant, which he had, kind of. Again, not taking away freeing the slaves. Good thing. What was bad was everything else he did. He did things like he suspended parts of the Constitution, and there is no authority in the Constitution to suspend any part of it, even during wartime. He, suspended the First Amendment. If there were people in the North, that was controlled, of course, by Lincoln in the northern part of the country, that disagreed with his policies or what he was doing in the war, he would have their presses smashed. This is the sort of thing that Lincoln did. And that's why when he was killed, Booth said, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. That part of it had very little to do with the Confederacy. That part of it had to do with the fact that he had seen, correctly, that Lincoln had become something of a tyrant. John Wilkes Booth was a Jesuit stooge. Do more research. I don't know all of his background. What I do know is what he said and why he said it. Supercruise 63 says, I think we're all headed from men-women sports to penis-vagina sports. I know it sounds crude, but I think that's where we're headed. Well, I don't see how we could be headed there, considering that trans people may have a penis, but still a trans woman may have a penis, but still compete in women's sports. I don't know where we're headed with that. Give me a bit to get out of this and maybe a little bit into Gina Carano, and I'll talk more about that. So then, we've got Lincoln, and what he did was basically shoot the Constitution and put it into its coffin. I think FDR, who then came along and did things that were totally and 100% unconstitutional by any sane reading of the document. Almost everything that he did was unconstitutional by any sane reading of the document, and probably extended the Great Depression by a good 10 years, according to the estimates of some more libertarian scholars. He pretty much put the final nails in the Constitution's coffin and dropped it down into the grave. Every single politician since then have simply been pissing on the Constitution's grave. There has been no politician since FDR who actually believed in what the Constitution says, nor made the slightest attempt to enforce it. And that's why today the Constitution is dead. That's why today you can impeach a private citizen who is no longer president. It's why it sets a really bad precedent by saying, okay, well, if we can impeach this guy, why don't we impeach, Obama or Bush, one of the Bushes? Why don't we impeach dead presidents? Why don't we go back and impeach Jefferson? Everybody hates the founding fathers because they owned slaves, which, of course, you have to actually look at the historical circumstances surrounding that to know, for example, that it was illegal for them to even free their slaves. Dumbasses. But why not? Why not go back and try them after they're dead? Why not? I mean, if we can try private citizens who are no longer president, why can't we go back and try dead presidents? Why can't we try impeach and try Obama? Why can't we do any of that? So it's a very, very bad precedent, and the reason they can do it is because the Constitution is dead, and no one currently living has ever seen it as an actual constitutional republic. Furthermore, for the last 2 to 3 generations, our schools have taught no history, no civics. They have other things that they're supposedly like that, but they don't actually teach it. I was a teacher for several years at the place that shall not be named. And I can tell you, just from my experience there, that my high school grads that were coming up didn't know how to read, nor write, nor perform the most basic math. And I say that not ironically or to be anything hyperbolic. I mean that absolutely true. They couldn't read, nor write, nor perform the most basic math. I have lots and lots of different anecdotes that I can give about that, and it won't unless somebody wants me to again, because I've done it before on the show. And I have an entire series on this sort of thing called America's Broken Schools. I believe that it's on my channel page. If you go there, you can see it's an entire series on it. And because I have been in and around education for my entire life, it's something that's near and dear to me and often comes up in the show. But they don't know what the Constitution says. They have no idea. They aren't even capable of reading the Constitution. Most of them have never once cracked a book in 12 years of compulsory indoctrination. They have never cracked a book. It's only even worse today, what with that virus whose name I can't mention, keeping students home. There was a recent statistic here, in Lincoln, Nebraska, about the number of students who had or hadn't logged into their online training stuff. It was something, I don't know what the student body is, because Lincoln's a city of about 322,000, so I don't know how many students we actually have, but over 5,000 of them towards the tail end of last semester or something like that had never logged in to their online learning systems. Clearly they're not teaching them anything, yet they continue to graduate them. When was the last time you ever heard of someone being held back a grade? And why do you think that happened? Do you think the teachers actually got so good that they can teach everyone without having to worry about the stupid not being able to pass a course or pass a grade? No. They just started rubber stamping them. And I saw this when I was teaching. It was quite clear that they had been rubber stamped right through their whole education because they couldn't read, they couldn't write, and they couldn't perform the most basic math. If you succeed in today's K through 12 education system, it's in spite of the system and not because of it. Or it's because you're real bright, you're very intelligent, and you learned stuff on your own. My advice to anyone who is currently sitting through this virus and what it's doing to our educational system is this: homeschool. Just homeschool. Period. End of story. You should always homeschool. Never, ever, ever let your children be victims to 12 years worth of nothing but communist and socialist indoctrination, because that's what it is. We wouldn't be here today with a dead Constitution, with a Senate that is trying a private citizen, if it weren't for the fact that your kids for 2 generations have been taught nothing. You can do a better job than they can. Homeschool, for God's sake. Okay, get back here to my, let me see. Excuse me. Drop of Truth, the Lincoln biography by Charles Kincaid, or Chin Kai, I don't know how to pronounce that, is a good start. I'll take a look at that. That you're talking about something about for Lincoln. Super Cruise 63, example, if you have a penis, you may compete in this sports series. If you have a giant vagina, you may compete in this series or have co-ed sports series. I think if anything, we're headed more towards the entirely 100% co-ed side of things. Because if you can identify, I mean, we've seen it. I've forgotten whether it's boxing or MMA, but it was a biologically born female against a trans female who was biologically born a man, kicked the snot, biologically born man kicked the snot out of biologically born female, a biologically born female who, by the way, who would have beat the crap out of me. But when you get 2 trained fighters up there, well, the biologically born male is simply going to have quite a lot more advantage in terms of upper body strength, muscle mass, things like that. And I've forgotten who said it, but it was one of the MMA people, the female one, who said she'd never been hit that hard before in her life. May well be that just leads to the end of women's sports entirely. You may have a situation where you have nothing but people who self-identify as women but were born male who are competing against other self-identified females who were born men. I don't know what you get. Hey, it's Dark Cheese Player. Nice to see you tonight. Johnny Arcade, no child left behind. Well, what you have to remember is this. There's an average. You get a whole bunch of students, and there's an average. 50% of your students will be operating below average. 50% will be operating above average. If you say we're going to make sure that all of them get a good education, all of them get the same education, that means the ones who are down here at the well below 50% mark are going to have the same education as someone up here, which means this guy's education or this gal's education is going to be completely dumbed down. They will not be learning what they are capable of learning, and they will not be learning the things that are going to help them go on to be the movers and the shakers, which frankly is what happens with really bright people. Sorry, there's nothing wrong with not being bright. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that if you want to give somebody a good education, then you're going to have to educate them at this level. Somebody who's an A student needs to be educated at the A student level. Somebody who's a C student needs to be educated at the C student level. Somebody who's a D level student needs to be educated at the very best possible that you can. Hopefully you get them up to where they can read and write and do some math so that they have at least the skills to survive in modern society. But they're not giving them that even. None of them have the skills to survive in modern society. The only ones who do are the excessively bright ones up in the A range who learn all of this because they're capable of reading and writing on their own, not because they were taught that in school. Super Cruise 63 says if a person with a penis wants to compete with a person, let's see if I can find here, with a vagina in sports, so they have to remove the penis so they will fit in the program. No wonder how many would do this. It's complete insanity at this point. I have no way to guess. I have no idea anymore. It's just totally insane. Was discussions of holding you back a grade when you were a kid, Star Siege Player? Well, they wouldn't do that anymore. I'm certain of it. There's a place for holding kids back. I think they held people back all the time when I was a kid. I want to say that there was a guy in my middle school, junior high school, who had gone through like 7th grade at least twice when I knew him, significantly older kid. But I had no problem with that, and frankly, neither should anybody else. There has to be objective standards. And if somebody doesn't meet those objective standards, don't let them go on. Just the way it is. Let's see, Dalton Bridges says, you were in a school when no child left behind policies were put in place, saw the effects firsthand. Yes, well, the effects are very simple. If you got to teach everybody at the same level, then everybody is going to be down here getting a D level type of education. You're just going to call it an A. C, quite correct, who can afford to homeschool children? Tough as hell. I think that it would probably have a generally good economic outcome if it were done generally and more or less simultaneously. The reason that our wages have been relatively stagnant for some time is because in the 1960s and 1970s, we doubled the size of our workforce. This is not to say that I am in any way not in favor of equality for women, because I am. But when they got equality, that meant we doubled our workforce size. And it's a simple question of supply and demand. If you have a supply that's here and a demand that's here, then you're going to see an equalization of the cost. So if you have a bunch of people here and a supply of people here and a demand for their labor over here, then they're going to get a certain type of wage. When you double the supply and your demand remains constant, then the wages these people are getting drops like a rock. So part of the reason that our wages have been stagnant and part of the reason to basically have to have two-parent incomes is because the wages are that much lower. Now, if there was a significant move toward homeschooling, that would take this labor pool and drop it significantly, thus causing the wages to go up. Again, it would have to be something that happened more or less simultaneously. But you need to get a bunch of parents who say to themselves, only one of us is going to work. And it would have to be a lot of them, a majority, a plurality of people in the United States who wanted to homeschool. And one parent remained home to homeschool. And if that happened with enough people, then you would see the wages of the other person go up to the point where you can afford a single parent household, a single income household. Let's see. Chinookwe? Okay, I wasn't sure how to pronounce that. Dropper 2 says we had an M2F playing in women's Aussies male to female, playing in women's Aussie rules football. 6'2", 240 pounds until he was banned after seriously injuring several biological women half his size. He still had his tackle and testosterone. Yeah, it's just a problem when you get into sports. I assume what'll happen is real simple. People will stop watching it. Ultimately, this is driven, to some extent by the market. Who's going to watch it? Who's going to buy the tickets? Whose butts are going to be in the seat, whether it's at a stadium or whether it's sitting home and watching, At some point, people who watch that stuff are not going to be interested anymore. It feeds into what I'm going to talk about when it comes to Gina Carano, very similar. But at some point, they're not going to be interested in it anymore. And when that happens, people who deal with producing those sports professionally, or in my case, living in Nebraska with no professional sports team, the Cornhuskers is who we care about. When it comes to no butts in the seats at Memorial Stadium, that's 76,000 people, they'll start changing because they want the money. I think ultimately that's the way it'll have to turn out. Now, whether or not it will, anybody's guess, but this is complete insanity as it stands right now. Dropper 2 says, let's see, they would need to at least 1 year of estrogen therapy too. And Super 63 says, I agree. I'm not sure you could give any amount of therapy to reduce a biological male's general upper body strength, muscle mass, etc., down to where if you're dealing with trained individuals, it becomes an even fight. I mean, sure, if you find, Gina Carano when she was, fighting professionally, put her up against me, she's going to mop the floor with me. It's going to be very unpleasant. But if you took a male MMA fighter from the same time period and threw him against me, not only is he going to mop the floor with me, he's going to mop the ceiling with me and the walls, and I'll be lucky if I'm not dead. I don't know how you equalize that out. I just don't know how you do it. Maybe medically there's some way to do it. But I don't think so. I don't think you're going to be able to equalize that out. Sports is where all this insanity just plain falls completely down. Drop Truth says, in my opinion, transgenders want to play sports and they should create their own league. Yeah, I'm not sure that's not a bad idea. Yeah, absolutely. Racing, bowling, and fishing would be acceptable sports to participate in multi-gender participants. Yeah, absolutely. Things that don't require, places where biological women are put at a significant disadvantage because biological men will have greater upper body strength, greater muscle mass, all kinds of stuff like that. Golf, also another one maybe. Yeah, I don't know enough about golf, but certainly some of the ones you're talking about there, Super Cruise 63. Drop 2 says you've had your ass handed to you on multiple occasions by excellent female golfers. Well, I'm not a golfer. My idea of a great golf course is one that involves, a mechanical windmill, a mechanical alligator. That's kind of my speed. Super 63, in golf, the upper body strength would be an advantage to biological males and make long shots. Volleyball, that might be another one. Starships player, I don't know. Consistency first, opportunity. You're off talking about a sport I know nothing about. I know nothing about almost any sport. Here's one that women could compete against men in, regardless of whom we identify with. Marksmanship. That's my sport. Marksmanship. I think women and men or trans people are perfectly capable of competing against each other with that. In question of that, it's a question of being steady with your aim and being able to see a distance. And I don't see that there's any particular difference between men or women, biological or not, trans or not, when it comes to something like that. There are lots of stuff that would work. But it doesn't work when you get into super competitive, aggressively athletic things. Football, for example. You take a biologically born female who identifies as male and put her into a lineup with almost anybody on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and they're going to get killed. They're just going to get creamed. And it doesn't matter how much they work out. If they work out exactly as much as the Cornhuskers football team does, and trust me, they work out like mad, they're still not going to be able to get the same upper body strength and muscle mass that a male will. It's just that simple. Again, lots of things that you could compete against. Marksmanship. But when it comes to something like that, they're just not going to be able to. And the only way it works well for anybody is if you switch the other way and go to female class when you have a biologically born male. Then they cream them. Just like it was said by some female MMA fighter, that being up against a male-born fighter was, when she got hit in the face, it was like being hit with a truck. Worst thing she'd ever taken. But that's where we are. The Constitution is dead. It's been dead for my entire life. It's really been dead since about 18 months after it was first ratified. And it was certainly been put in the grave by Abraham Lincoln. And, has basically, since FDR, every president has just been pissing on it. It doesn't matter anymore. It hasn't mattered for a very long time. And it's never going to matter again. And that's one of those things that, like my Planet of the Apes intro says, you are here, and it is now. And if you don't grab onto that and hold on to it, you might as well be dead. This is one of those things that is a reality. It is here, you are here, and it is now. And it is now at a point where the Constitution might as well not exist and is utterly irrelevant, as we can see from the fact that they are attempting to try someone who is a private citizen and not the President of the United States anymore. Dalton Berry says, bone density is a major advantage for men. Yeah, absolutely. There are any number of things that for a trained person is going to be a huge advantage. Again, if you take somebody like Gina Carano when she was competing in MMA, she's going to kill me. Middle-aged dude who has barely worked out for any part of his life, and because of the not being able to go around and move around very much in the last year, isn't exactly in the best shape of his life. You may have noticed, if you've been watching very long, that I have had to buy a new one of these vests because the other one is now too small. So it ain't getting better for the last year or so. But if you got Gina Carano right now, she could kick the snot out of me, right? Again, put her up against a male MMA fighter, and you might have more of a problem. Let's see. Some of the best biological archers in the world are biological females. Yeah, but there's got to be lots of sports where it doesn't matter very much. But you get into some, and it matters quite a lot. Pound for pound, women have better lower body strength. Sure. Yeah. Shoulder dimensions, too. Yes. Women are superb long-distance swimmers. Again, not something I know about specifically because it's never been my sport. If anything, my sport has been marksmanship. I like to watch, when it comes to the Olympics, if I watch anything, that's what I'm really watching. If I watch anything. I'm a geek from way back. I don't know sports from a hole in the ground, really. But I can tell that clearly you're going to get into sports. I mean, they have, girls and boys football and basketball and whatnot in middle school and high school for a reason, because they know that putting men together with boys together with girls means that somebody's going to get creamed, and it's probably going to be the girl, even if they both train as hard as they possibly can. Men have a superior advantage in many parts of strength than do women. Again, Take Gina Carano, put her against me, she's going to kill me. This is a woman who trained to do what she was doing, and I have not been in any way trained, so I'll get killed. Starcy's Player says they're trying to impeach Trump for accountability and to send a message and to not let him get away with it, all of which is unconstitutional. Impeachment is not a criminal trial. It is not censure. Absolutely. As I said going into this, the Constitution specifies, frankly, very simply, that the president is the one that is impeached and tried. Well, the president, Donald Trump, was president when he was impeached. When it got to the trial, he was no longer president. How do you try a president who's no longer a president? He's a private citizen. If you want to get him for something, for accountability and to send a message and to not let him get away with it, then charge him with a charge that's identical to the one that they're trying him for right now, because I know there are all kinds of laws that would cover what they think that he's done. Try him. Charge him and try him. What they're doing, of course, what this really tells me is very simple. I've said it repeatedly. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to show this video probably over and over until they drag me away from this chair. It's very simple. The Democrats are out for blood. They have been out of contact with reality for the last 4 years, and now they want to get back at us. They want to get back in anybody who ever pushed back against, them saying Trump is literal Hitler, which he never was. He was never literal Hitler. He was never particularly racist. He certainly wasn't, sexist. Well, he's about sexist for a very rich man. But he was never particularly any of the things that they said he was. And again, I always say this, I'm not a Trump supporter. Unfortunately, I am not out of contact with reality. And so, therefore, I am in a position to say, hey, wait a minute, slow down, this ain't true. And you can come up with, for every example that they can give of Trump being a racist or something, I can look at and say, yeah, but unfortunately the press only showed you part of that. They're showing you a piece of the footage. They're trying to make him look bad. The press, nothing you see in the press is real, and that's certainly the case with respect to Trump. But he's not literal Hitler. He never was. If he was, more bad things would have happened. And in fact, a lot of good things happened under him. Let's see. Drop Truth says, Maxine Waters says has denied provoking riots, but you have the video, as do thousands of others. Yes, so do I. Anytime I see videos of that sort of thing that show up on YouTube, I use a great program called a 4K Video Downloader. I don't have it linked to in my description box. I'll find a link for it. Great program. Comes from multiple architectures. I know there's one for at least Linux and also Windows. Great program. I use it all the time because now, for some weird reason, I'm coming to you at 1080p and 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, if I go into the interface that YouTube provides for me, they'll only allow me to download at 720p. But I want the full 1080p, 60 frames per second for my backups. So I use 4K Video Downloader to pull it down at the resolution that I want to pull it down at. And it's a great program. You can pull down all kinds of stuff from YouTube. I think there's add-ons of stuff that'll let you do it for other services. So great program. Grab that. Use it to pull down any video that you think interests you, because God knows, with YouTube being as much of a giant censor as they are, it could disappear at any time. Also lets you do things like, well, right now, as any given time, YouTube has lots and lots of movies that are available for free. Stargate Continuum is currently available for free. Stargate Ark of Truth is currently available for free. The Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Left Behind, is available for free. There is at least one user out there that I have seen that posted a few weeks ago, and they'll probably find it eventually. But right now, there's a copy. Full copy of Lawrence of Arabia in 1080p that's available. You can pull down all of those with 4K Video Downloader, and you can do it with lots, and I'm not being paid by them either, just a committed customer as always. You can pull them down in batches if you want to. So 4K Video Downloader, I will definitely link to that as soon as I am done here tonight. Supercruise63 says they're talking of recalling Gavin Newsom, the second Democratic governor in the People's Republic of California in as many decades. Well, if they get it done, great. Whenever I hear those, I don't really ever expect it to happen, to be perfectly honest. Crypto1701 says, who needs torrents when you have YouTube? Yeah, that's true to some extent. I'm going to talk about Gina Carano in a bit. When I do, I'm going to talk about Disney and how you should cancel your Disney Plus subscription. But the one thing I want to mention is, the Democrats are they're out for blood. They're not interested in justice. They're interested in, frankly, getting as many conservatives and people that don't disagree with them as humanly possible. And I always will circle back around to the only individual who should have been even a contender for the Democratic Party nominee last time around, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies, and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
so I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
Oh, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, I want you to know, if you ever happen to see me, I am in love with you. If you're not happily married, contact me. If you ever get divorced, contact me. Oh, sure, Nebraska isn't some place that has fun places to surf, but you and I have at least one thing in common, which is we're both coloring our hair. My beard, if you've seen me in weeks where I wasn't doing it or experimentally doing it, is coming in a weird, patchy brown, white. So I'm coloring this. You don't get this skunk beard by accident. I'm coloring my beard brown, mostly with leaving this part of it naturally white because it's actually all naturally white there. Tulsi Gabbard is also coloring her hair to look younger, although in her case she's leaving one sort of thin strand white. It's probably her natural color so that she appears a little bit more authoritative. This skunk beard is designed to be a little more authoritative. So we have that in common, Congresswoman Gabbard. Please, for God's sake, call me. If you're not happily married, considering divorce, or planning to divorce, call me because I am in love with you. Not only are you intelligent and the only person who should really have ever been even a contender for the Democratic nomination, had they not screwed you out of even being involved in debates, you're also the first president who would actually look good in a bikini. But she has got it right. She's 100% right, and it worries me quite a lot because I'm a libertarian, which means the federal government has painted a target on my back. I am now targeted, and with the legislation that they have pending, they have the means, if they pass that, and I assume that they will, to come after the people that they have targeted. At some point, I'll be whispering to somebody, "Hail Hydra." Let's see here. Drop2 says oldapps.com is rather good too. Don't know that one. Yes, happened before. That's how you got the governor, Arnold. Yes. In terms of getting a Republican governor out there and having a recall. Supercruise 63 says, you never tire of seeing her and her point of view. Yes, I never tire of Congresswoman Gabbard. I never, ever, ever, ever tire of her. John Brennan, Drop Truth says, what a scumbag. Yes, absolutely. He is a complete scumbag. However, he's a scumbag that is identical to all the rest of the scumbags in those intelligence agencies. By the way, another place the Constitution is dead. There is no constitutional authority for any of those agencies to exist, whether it's the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, any of them are not constitutionally existing. They should not. There's no language in the Constitution that authorizes their existence in the first place. They're all dirty, and despite the fact that some of them may have at one time had a useful purpose, they're now all just plain dirty, and they're dangerous. You know, you get Brennan, a guy who was the director of the CIA. How is he particularly different than the current director? You know, they all have to be paranoid little pricks. They have to be because that's part of the job. So I don't see that the current incarnation of the FBI is going to be any different. They're going to become CIA, rather. They're going to be coming for me. I have a target painted on my back, and Congresswoman Gabbard knows it. If she were to run again in 2024 for the first time in decades, I would change my party affiliation to Democrat just so that I could vote for her in the primaries. And if she actually won the nomination, I would vote for her for president. No question about it in my mind. She is the most electable person who has the most common sense things that I've ever seen come out of a Democrat. For God's sake, run again, Congresswoman Gabbard. And, call me. Crypto 1701 says they want socialism and they're trying to get it through anarchy. Yes, tear everything up and sheeple will do anything for peace, including giving up their freedom. They've already given up their freedom, as the last year clearly shows. We have had nothing but our usual power-mad sociopathic narcissists from the level of my own mayor all the way up, who have been abusing totally the powers that they do not have, either under the United States Constitution or under their state constitution, or in our case of our local mayor, under the laws and regulations of our own city. They have taken complete control that they do not have the authority to take. That's what they're doing. Sorry, John Brennan, but who cares? I care, because if he's saying that I'm a target, that means that people working under him have started to have believed at some point, or still do believe, that I'm a target. And there's no reason to think that the people who are currently running the CIA don't believe that I'm a target. I believe I'm a target, and I believe at some point they'll come for me. And when they do, I will probably go out all by myself. See all these people who claim to be patriots, and how they'll stand up and fight. I think they're a bunch of lying scumbags. They're a bunch of keyboard warriors who, in fact, will simply let us all die. Yes, Drop of Truth, Crypto 1701, making the rules up as they go along. You meant getting his name wrong? Well, I don't care about. Anyhow. That sort of leads into my next, in terms of my being left out to dry when the time comes, brings me into Gina Carano. Gina Carano, if you do not know, and you probably do, is the woman who played a very pivotal role in the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. She was let out to dry as a result of tweets that they just said that the woke decided were egregious. Lucasfilm fired her. United Talent Agency, her agent dropped her. And her PR firm also dropped her. They have essentially succeeded in canceling her. Her offending tweets, for example, her offensive, horrible, cannot possibly get around problems was that she kind of made fun of people who are putting pronouns in their Twitter descriptions by putting nonsense words into her Twitter description bios. Okay. I don't really have a problem if you want to put that stuff in there. I just think it's kind of silly. And I think that if somebody wants to make fun of it by putting silly stuff in their own bio, they should be allowed to do so. And anybody who isn't a fragile keyboard warrior, SJW woke schmuck will just look at it and go, oh, okay, well, whatever, Used to be, there was once a time, and I still do it all the time when I get a lot of pushback that I don't care to deal with. Used to be a time when you could just, click your mouse and scroll past. If you didn't like something, scroll past. And these days, if you don't like something, swipe past. You don't have to sit there and get offended by every last damn thing in the universe. If you didn't like that she had nonsense words in her description that were making fun of pronouns, scroll past it. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Well, the woke care, because as is in my video of the same name, there is no escaping the woke. And that is linked to in my description box. They will not let it alone. I have many times said that I would much prefer that this show be about science fiction, about doing reviews and discussing things that have to do with science fiction. But I can't, because there is no escaping the woke. You can't get away from it. And this is a perfect example. Gina Carano did stuff that had no bearing on anything, that a sensible person could just have scrolled past or swiped past. But no, the woke decided that they have to do stupid crap. Real quick in my my chat here. Disney equals uber woke and has for decades. Oh, yes, absolutely, Crypto 1701. Dropper 2 says, wasn't Gina supposedly going to get her own series? I don't know for sure about that. Star Wars Troopers or some such garbage. I don't know. Refer to me innocent Apple. No Mr., Mrs., Ms., just Apple. Oh, it's not even that, Crypto 1701. You haven't seen it. It's he, her, him. She, or he, him, or something. I don't even know. I can't put that stuff into my Twitter bio because my Twitter bio is an ad for my channel, right? And you can't tell what my gender is if you don't, watch my channel, because my avatar is a jackalope. It's the same one, you see down in the corner here. It's the exact jackalope. That's the jackalope I use for every one of my social media accounts. And I can't afford to waste space in there talking about what my gender is. But those stupid gender, okay, if you want to have gender pronouns in there, I know I have at least one viewer that does. Fine. Put them in there. But if somebody else doesn't, or if they're making fun of you, scroll past. You don't have to get your nose out of joint. Just scroll past. There's no reason that you have to become a nut job on the subject. No he, him, she, her, just Apple. Yeah, fine. Put it in there. Unless you're Gina Carano or somebody like that they've been going after, nobody will care. Here is the thing, however, that triggered Miss Carano's being dumped off by Disney and her agent and her PR firm. She posted the following. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors. Even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them. How is that any different than hating someone for their political views? Full stop. That was all she posted. All right. Now, the woke decided that meant she was talking for certain about Republicans, and she might have been talking about the right. I don't know. For me, I look at it and I go, yeah, she's talking about libertarians. Those of us who now have an actual target painted on our backs by government. But if you look at that, it's a statement of historical fact combined with a simple question. It is not worth getting your panties in a twist over. As always, if you don't like it, scroll past. It's not worth getting any level of upset about. It is not anti-Semitic. And by the way, Jessie Milestone, oh, my wonderful Jessie Milestone, whose cow button I have worn because she sent it to me when this channel first started. My beautiful Jessie Milestone has a video that she put out today that's called Stop Using Anti-Semitism as an Excuse. I didn't link to it below because it came out too late, but I will link to it as soon as I'm done here. And she says, stop talking about stuff being anti-Semitic if you don't at least ask a freaking Jew whether they think it's anti-Semitic. Because Jessie Milestone is Jewish, and she thinks that this is utter, complete nonsense that's going on in this one. And it is. This is people who are ultra woke and can only have one possible worldview, one possible belief system, and it will never change because belief systems never change. They have this one belief system that tells them if you don't agree with everything that they have to say, if you don't espouse their belief system, then you've got to go. And they've been working on her for a long time to get her to go, and today they finally succeeded, or late yesterday sometime, they finally succeeded. Crypto1701 says, Supercruise63 says, the non-binary want to be referred to as they, them. Yes, okay, I don't care. I just don't care at all. Be called whatever you want to be called. I don't care. If you tell me, I'll call you any damn thing you want. But I don't care if it's in your stupid bio. I just don't care. Crypto 1701, six and stones. Yes, there used to be a saying that's now been lost from a public lexicon. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. These words are not hurting anyone. These words of Gina Carano's are not hurting anyone. Are non-binary singular or more than two? Non-binary, I assume more than one. I mean, not one or the other, but both or neither. The best example I can give of that I know about is that character from Star Trek Discovery, whose name I can't remember, who is played by the actress that for no good reason had a double mastectomy. That's a non-binary character. Does not identify as neither male nor female. So that's the only thing I know about for sure. I assume that there are some people like that in real life. I personally have never met one, nor do I expect to, because they've got to be statistically insignificant to irrelevant. Crypto 1701, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Yes, a common term, acronym from IT way back. Plant those three things in someone's mind and you control them. Microsoft used it extensively. Yes, Microsoft was particularly bad about it. If they had any level of competition for some of their products at one point, they would sow fear, uncertainty, and doubt in consumers, such that they would not switch to a competitor's product over theirs, despite the fact sometimes it would take years, decades even, for the things that Microsoft promised would be in their software to actually show up. But FUD is very, very consistently used. Gene Roddenberry had the right idea. I assume you mean the phrase that always comes in at the as my after credits. Ultimate knowledge, ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds. That is an absolutely appropriate and accurate statement. Yes. Drop 2 says Semites come from the line of Shurn via Abram and Hagar, Ishmael and Abraham, formerly Abram and Sarah. Arabs and Jews are Semites. You're talking to an atheist. Take your word on that, because I haven't a clue. I have not done that much studying. What little religious instruction I have has come from 14 years of sitting in pews with my ex-wife. And it was useful for me in terms of finding out more about Catholic dogma. I learned a lot about Catholic faith, but it doesn't tell me anything about much of anything else. And I've never really looked very hard. So certainly take your word for it. Have to go, Starships player. Sleep now. Good night. Good night to you. Glad you could come in. Drop 2 says binary equals 2, so non-binary is either singular or more than 2. Yeah, well, I don't know. Something other than 2. Yes. Crypto 1701 says the new safe zone world. Don't hurt little Bobby's feelings. A way to not prepare people for life. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm not saying that it was right, but there was a time, for example, where if you insulted a woman, touched a woman in a way that she didn't want to be touched, It didn't cause a giant outcry, other than the woman would slap the frack out of your face in public where everyone could see. I think that was actually a good way to go. Instead of going completely nuts, just hit you in the face, give you a good slap across the face, and get you to stop. I think that's good. Public humiliation like that is good. It teaches a man more than anything else would ever teach him about how not to treat a lady. 2.25, I guess. Crypto 1701, I don't know. Subaru 63 says Gina Carano would have made a great Wonder Woman. Oh, yeah, absolutely. She'd have made a great Batwoman. She'd have made a great just about anything that requires someone to have a physicality to be able to, push across the notion that she could, in fact, conceivably beat up your average criminal. With her, again, your average criminal, they're not necessarily all that physically fit. You throw Gina Carano at him, she's going to kick the crap out of him. Put her in as Batwoman. I mean, you'd have to have some other showrunner because that show's so stupid. Which, by the way, I was so thrilled about. I have an alarm that goes off on Sundays reminding me that Batwoman is on, and I dread it. When it hits, I go, oh, God, no. I forgot. I got to go watch Batwoman. No new Batwoman last Sunday, so there's that. Yay. Anyway, if they'd had her as Batwoman, that would have worked. She could have gone up against those stuntmen and taken them down in a way that you could say, oh, yeah, I could see, her taking them down. Ruby Rose, 92 pounds, or Lascivia, forgotten her name now this season, too small, not physically intimidating in any way. She would have been great for that. Same thing with Wonder Woman. She would have been a great Wonder Woman, absolutely. Drop Juice says, Crypto 1701, how about a half-wit? Identify whoever you want to. I don't care. I just don't care. I identify however you want to, however makes you happy. But if somebody's making fun of it, scroll past. The number of things that I have scrolled past in my lifetime is astonishing. Sticks and stones, buddy. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I say this as a guy who was a child of the 1970s and liked Star Trek, was a Star Trek fan at the time when being the fan of a dead TV series, which was all it was at that time, meant that you would get bullied. And I mean actually bullied, by big guys who would want to beat the crap out of you and occasionally would. That's what I grew up with. Actual sticks and stones breaking my bones, but I learned early on that words, when they just called me names, words will never hurt me. Get it through your brains, you stupid woke SOBs. I get that what you're trying to do is no less than tyranny, out and out tyranny. But for the average person who sees this crap, when you see something that upsets you on social media, scroll past, swipe past. It doesn't have to impact you in any way unless you want it to. I'm a firm believer, in fact, that there is very little of what they call cyberbullying. Because I've been actually bullied by real bullies, people who wanted to harm me physically. And trust me, when you can scroll past something, that doesn't strike me as actual bullying in any way. Superguru 63 says she's a voluptuous woman and can do her own stunts because of her training, and she is hot. Well, there's a reason that I found this picture of her. Yep, that's what mute is for. Crypto 1701 says, yes, mute, block, whatever you want to do. If you didn't like what she had to say, her perfectly reasonable tweet, there was nothing wrong with her tweet, nothing whatsoever wrong with her tweet, then scroll past. But then I know the woke. There is no escaping the woke. The freaking woke will never be satisfied until we are living under their thumb. It's just that simple. They want communism. They want socialism. They will never be satisfied until we are living under their damned thumbs. They're destructive. They are liars. I don't know what you do about them. I just don't know. Other than crush them under your foot any way that you can. It may be that we need a civil war to crush them, because they're destructive to the body politic, they are destructive to my freedom, and they are destructive to yours, as is evidenced by the fact that they can take a totally innocuous tweet and something that she was just making fun of because she thought it was stupid, and in taking it seriously and taking it personally and deciding that meant she was a horrible human being that had to be canceled, and got her canceled. So, what you can do to help this, and I don't know how much, is do what I have done. There's been a lot of backlash on this on social media. A lot of backlash. And it has led to a couple of different hashtags. One is Cancel Disney Plus. Use the hashtag, and if you have Disney Plus, cancel it. I don't care if you like WandaVision the way that I do. Cancel it. I don't care if you're looking forward to any more of the stuff that's coming out of the MCU or the coming out of Disney Star Wars. Cancel it. And if you want to watch that stuff, well, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. One's the old-fashioned way. BitTorrent. Oh, excuse me. BitTorrent. Oh, excuse me. That's the old-fashioned way. These days, today, and I say this again, as always on this show, I am speaking purely hypothetically for the purposes of educating my colleagues, because I was in IT for 40 years, and I was in IT security for a good chunk of it. And my colleagues are always interested in methods and techniques that they can do in order to protect themselves from people like pirates. So if you're IT security and you're working on finding out whether or not you're maybe an intellectual property that you or your employer owns, and you want to find out if it's being pirated, well, solely here for the benefit of my colleagues, I want to give you some information about how you can do that. You go to the search engine, duckduckgo.com. And by the way, everyone should be using duckduckgo.com. I have a previous video where I go over different alternative platforms and alternative applications that you can do. Everybody should use duckduckgo.com, not just my colleagues. But if you are one of my colleagues, again, this is solely for their benefit, solely for educational purposes. And you want to find out if your intellectual property is being stolen. This works really well, by the way, on a phone. And use the Brave web browser at all times. If you're using it on a desktop, make sure that you have lots of ad blockers, which, of course, all of my colleagues know that you should have good ad blockers. And if you're using a handheld device, use the Brave web browser, which has a good ad blocker built into it, even on the handheld side. Go to the search engine, my colleagues only, just for informational purposes. Go to the search engine, duckduckgo.com, and you might enter the terms watch space, in quotes, whatever the hell you want to watch, space, online, space, free. My colleagues will then be able to discover by simply clicking around or tapping around a little bit, you'll eventually find out whether or not your intellectual property is being pirated. Now, if you're a private person to do this for any purpose other than just discovering if or where it's being pirated, that would be wrong to use these results. That would be 100% wrong. Just throwing it out there. Cancel Disney Plus. Get rid of it. The best way to deal with this is to hit them in the pocketbook. I don't think that there's anything that you can do about getting poor Gina Carano uncanceled. But you can hit them in the pocketbook, and that is by unsubscribing from Disney Plus. Unsubscribe from it. You can also do what I've been doing. You can use some more other hashtags. I've been doing things like We Love Gina Carano as a hashtag. I Stand With Gina Carano as a hashtag. The Cancel Disney Plus hashtag has been trending for about 24 hours now. That's how pissed off fans are about this. You know, pretty much as pissed off or worse than I am about this. Because again, I want this show to just be about science fiction. That's what I want. That's always my goal, but the damn woke won't allow it. I can't just talk about stuff because they get into stuff like canceling Gina Carano for no reason. They're lying scumbags who are looking to put you under their boot. And if you let them, they will. Let's see. Crypto 1701 mutes for, yes, 1701, Texas has a bill to secede. That's nice, but even if it passes, they won't be able to get away with it without a war, and they'll lose. because all it needs to happen is for the United States to park a carrier group off in the Gulf of Mexico, and they can strike any Texan target without ever endangering the carrier group. The military might of the United States is such that in the event that someone secedes, they will get a war and they will lose. That's just all there is to it. If it passes, you vote in November, can't cancel what you never had. Yes, I never actually had it either. I leave it to you to decide what method I might have done or will be using this evening to watch WandaVision. But I won't be supporting Disney over it. Never, never, never. I will also never be ever reviewing any of their products here on my channel. Much as I love reviewing things, even if they came out with the next Endgame, I am not going to review it. I may observe it via some type of screener, but I will not be reviewing it. Never, ever again. Disney, anything you own, forget it. The former Lucasfilm properties, the 20th Century Fox properties, none of them, all of them, gone because of what you've done. Canceled Disney Plus. We love Gina Carano, and I stand with Gina Carano. Yeah, Crypto1701 announced new hashtag is, sure, let's make it weirder. God, yes. Have you seen that advertising campaign with the Paramount Mountain? Holy crap, what the hell is that? Who thought that was a good idea? What did they get the same PR firm that did that that one a while back about the razor, where they're portraying all men as ogling and bullies and all that crap? I mean, was it the same group? Because that is the dumbest thing that's the dumbest PR campaign I have. I don't know if I've ever seen a PR campaign dumber than that one. I mean, not just offensive like the one was for the razors, but this is dumb. It's weird and it's stupid, and you watch and you go, who thought this was a good idea? At least it's funny, but it's so dumb. There's a couple of very good videos that were made today about Gina Carano. The best one that I've seen. A very, very good video by a critical drinker called The Girl Who Wouldn't Back Down. Very, very good video. I have it linked to in my description box. Please, please go watch that video. A very good video. Crypto1701 said Butthead got Beavis to throw Stewart off the mountain. I haven't even watched the whole thing. I saw Patrick Stewart singing on the top of the mountain. I said, I forget this. This is too dumb for words. This is just too dumb for words. Who thought that was a good idea? Who thought that was a good idea? I sure hope that Gina Carano wasn't using them as their PR firm. If she was, that's the one good thing you could say coming out of this. They dumped her, and that would be bad. But I suspect it wasn't. Somebody else was her PR people. Anyway, there are, however, in addition to a couple of very good videos on YouTube right now, there are now multiple free, with ads, Gina Carano films that are available on Tubi TV right now. I have a general list of them below. If you click, you'll get a list of Gina Carano films on Tubi TV. But my favorite, because I don't remember when, last week or sometime, I think, I was interested in what she was doing, and so I started going through and watching a bunch of her movies. The one that I like best, actually, so far, is a movie called Haywire. I definitely suggest you watch that one, and there is a specific link to that in my description box below. Go watch Gina Carano's work. She is, I don't think necessarily the greatest actress in the world with the widest range, but she's a good actress, and she's a great action star. If you were making, if it was the 1990s, she could easily be sort of the Arnold Schwarzenegger of action movies now, and a better actress in general. But go watch her stuff. It's available on Tubi.tv. Go stream it from somewhere, anywhere other than a Disney streaming service. But stream it from somewhere, stream her work. She's got a lot of good movies out there. And that one in particular, Haywire, is a very, very good action movie. She can sell those action movies because she, of course, is a trained fighter. And even when she's going up against men, it's perfectly reasonable because she's physically intimidating and can fight. So it works. It works very well. And I think that's probably a good movie. It's kind of a thriller. Do watch it. Haywire, good movie. Okay. I think that I'm finished being pissed off about her. I risked today, because last night when it started going down, I was very, very, very angry. If I had thought about it very hard, I probably would have done a video right then. But I came close today of doing something I don't usually do, which is what some of my viewers have called going full Howard. This refers to Howard Beale in the movie Network, where he ultimately ends up screaming, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." That's kind of where I stand with Gina Carano. I am mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. This is insanity. This is becoming crazy, and the woke are turning into something that are going to have to be exterminated if they don't stop. Hear me, woke. What you want is evil, and you're going to have to be stopped. Enough of that. So, I had some people on Twitter. Let me see. It's been about 10:30 or so now. So an hour and a half. That's a good place to start this, I suppose. I had some people on Twitter who, and I think actually Crypto1701, you were the one that probably asked this question, if I remember correctly, on Twitter. What's my background? Where am I from? What have I done? I don't usually talk about myself very much. It tends to come out in little bits and pieces here and there. But I thought, what the hell, I'll pull a Batman and tell you a little about who I am and how I came to be. That's a Batman thing. If you're familiar with the very first issue of Detective Comics, the first story was who he is and how he came to be. So I'm 56 years old. I was born about 56 years ago, just over 56 years ago now, and my birthday was in January. And I was born 56 years ago in the small South Dakota town of Yankton. Reasonably small. I mean, it's not tiny. I don't know exactly what it is now, but it's a large enough town that it has a hospital and lots of people that live there and malls and stuff. But I was born there in 1965, and my father got his doctorate in psychology from there, and then later was it South Dakota? I've forgotten which university it is. That's in nearby Vermillion, South Dakota. We moved to Omaha, Nebraska, which today is a city of a population of about 1 million. It was much smaller then. We moved there before I went to kindergarten, and then moved to where I am now, Lincoln, Nebraska, just before I started going to kindergarten. I grew up here in Lincoln. At the time, it was a city of 100 to 150,000 people. It was kind of stagnant there for a long time. Then after I left, it grew to be more than triple that size. It's now at about 322,000-ish. If you want to go and look at my virus statistics, you can see exactly how much it is. 322,000-ish. I started out when I was in high school. I got an interest in theater, in acting. And for a while, I studied, actually for longer than you might imagine, because I sucked at it. I studied theater at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, which today has a very good theater department. It wasn't bad back then, but Johnny Carson has donated just a ton of stuff, and it's changed very radically since I went to school there. But I went to University of Nebraska's theater department for some time as an actor, and for a while, a couple of 3 summers, I worked summer stock theater in theaters that were along the Mississippi River, that were, for tourists and stuff like that. They were mostly dinner theaters, that sort of thing. I made reasonably good money. What you have to understand is that most actors don't actually make a living acting. They make a living waiting tables. For every really famous actor that you've ever seen or heard of, there are 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 actors who will never, ever reach anything like that level of success and primarily be waiting tables, doing summer stock, doing other small theatrical work, and taking classes. And that's all they'll ever do for their entire career. So the fact that 1 year I made almost $3,000 acting put me into a bracket of people that was actually making some money at my craft. There were very few people who could say that. One of the last theater that I worked on a summer stock was in Canton, Missouri. And it was what we called at that time, I don't know if they still have them, but it was a partial equity house. What that meant was as long as they had one member who was a member of Actors Equity Association, which later merged to become part of the Screen Actors Guild. As long as they had one actor who was a member of the union, then the other people who were non-union members, could earn points toward becoming union members. That was a big deal. Getting into SAG is difficult, and it requires a lot of effort, and it's really very hard to do. The best way to do it, frankly, is to somehow get cast in something like a film, and then what'll happen is SAG will then come to you and say, okay, we'll let you be in this movie without being a member, but then you got to join if you ever plan to do it again. And they'll make you join. And so being in SAG is a big deal for any actor. But the woman that we had, who was the SAG actress, equity actress at that point, was someone you probably never seen unless you're my age or late, or even a little older. The Ace Hardware lady. She made just a ton of money. She was one of the few actors I've ever known who made just a ton of money. Being the Ace Hardware lady. It was the spokesperson for Ace Hardware. They were national commercials. They were very successful. My God, when you have national commercials, the money just pours in comparatively. She could afford a place, a nice townhouse in Chicago itself. Definitely made a lot more money than anybody that I ever knew. But she said to me towards the end of that season, why don't you come to Chicago? There's actual work for actors there as opposed to Lincoln, Nebraska. So I went to Chicago and discovered fairly early on two things. One that I'd sort of kind of figured out as I'd gone along, which is I wasn't a very good actor to start with. But secondarily, I did not have the temperament for it. As I say, most actors don't work at acting. They work at waiting tables. And you get a lot of rejection. You for every one crappy role that you might get, you're going to go and be rejected 50 or 100 times. And no fault of your own specifically. In my case, it kind of was because I wasn't that good. But I know lots of good actors who have proved no fault of their own. It's just that there's, 5,000 people who've been auditioning, and after a while they just find the one, oh, this one's got the most charisma, let's go with them. Because that's really what tends to turn it over. And I didn't have that charisma. If I did, I'd be good at doing a YouTube channel. But I didn't have that kind of charisma, and I didn't have the temperament for constant rejection. So I went back to school at the College of DuPage, which is a 2-year college associate's degree in suburban Chicago, with an eye specifically towards then transferring to Northern Illinois University. And I was studying computer science. Now, I had been with computers. This was a natural thing for me to do because I'd been with computers since 1977. That was when I had my first basic programming language basic, my first basic course in computers, at a time when doing that meant a teletype machine with double-wide computer paper. Double-wide computer paper was like this wide, and it was alternating green and white, and it fed through on a roller on this teletype machine. The teletype machine in 1977, in turn, was then connected to what was called an acoustic modem, because back then you had telephones that had either rotary, or they were starting to see, push-button phones, but rotary dial phones, push-button ones, that had a receiver that had a speaker that you listened to here and a microphone that you listened to down here. Well, there was no way to plug these things in from East High School in Lincoln to what the computer we were actually using, which was a mainframe at the Lincoln Public Schools administration building on the other side of town. So we used an acoustic modem at 300 bits per second. And you would plug that sucker in. What would happen is you'd take the handset from the phone. The phone would plug into the teletype machine. You would take the handset from the phone and put it onto what they called an acoustic coupler. It was like the negative version of the hand. So you'd plug the speaker into this thing that looked kind of like the inverse of the handheld thing that you held, and it would then communicate via sound down the wire. And at about 300 bits per second. Very, 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 very slow compared to the, 100 gigs that I'm getting right now, 100 gigabits per second or something like that. Anyhow, that's how we would then do our programs, is our teletype machines would be talking to the Lincoln Public Schools system downtown. After that, the year after that, in 1978, my father got his first business computer. This is because my father was a psychologist, and he had his own business practice. And my dad was very, very into computers from a very early time. Again, you have to go back a ways, late 1960s-ish, early 1970s. I've forgotten when my dad got his bachelor's degree. My father was working on his, not his bachelor's, but his doctorate in psychology. There was a guy over in the computer science department who was working on his doctorate, and the two of them got together. They got together because, in a way that people at universities really like to see, cross-discipline people getting together in order to perform a specific task. My father had to crunch a lot of numbers. Now, back then, a computer was the size of a small warehouse and couldn't do what your computer in your pocket can do, what your phone can do. This is multiple orders of magnitude greater than what was available for computer back then. And where today, crunching numbers back then meant sitting down and writing things out on a piece of paper, using a device called a slide rule to at least come to some general level of accuracy, but nowhere near as accurate as if you could use a computer. Even a little bit later, if my dad had been working on this 15 or so years later, he would have just taken these numbers and plugged them into a spreadsheet. But spreadsheets didn't exist back then. The computer programs themselves to do what he wanted to crunch those numbers didn't exist. So he got the bright idea, let's get together with this guy over in computer science who's getting his degree, and we'll get him. What he did was he got his doctorate based on the programs that he wrote so that my father could run his numbers. This resulted in my father having a lot more accurate numbers for his doctorate, and the doctoral committee being rather impressed by this. Now, today, it would be nothing. Today, you just have your laptop, throw your numbers into it, and be done. Although it's not quite that simple. I get a kid studying for her doctorate, and it ain't that simple. But if you got a lot of statistics to do, it's not that complicated. You just do the statistics on your spreadsheet or wherever. But back then, big deal. So in 1978, my father got his first business computer. It was nothing like the computers that you see today. It was gigantic, and it had 8-inch floppy drives, if anybody remembers what a floppy drive looked like. 8-inch floppy drives that held a whopping 140K worth of information. But it was a big advancement in terms of computing at that point, because it was something that a small business could afford, and it would sit on a big desk. I'm spinning a little bit on my thing here. Supercruise63 says, I shared the post with Gina that was shared with me on Facebook. I haven't seen any posts that she would have done in the last several hours. I've got a copy of one that is that's the quote-unquote offending post. I hope that she doesn't lose her nerve. I get that she's looking at the end of her acting career. By the way, Gina, Hollywood is not your only option. If you come to Nebraska I will figure out a way to produce and find a good local director with good SAG member actors that can be a vehicle for you. You come here, away from that, where really nobody gives a crap anymore about any of that junk. You come away from that. We'll find you a vehicle right here. It'll be a good movie. Show off your talents. You shared that copy of the non-offensive tweet that the woke went insane about. Anyway, getting back to my own background here. So 1978, my father gets his first business computer, and really I never had my hands off of computers ever since 1978. There was either one sitting in my home that I used. I was one of the first, I was the only kid in my junior high school to ever turn in any kind of reports that were printed by a computer. They were printed with a dot matrix printer that nobody sees now, and that made the print look, I mean, it was crap. It just, by today's standards, it would have been unacceptable crap. But back then, my teachers all thought I was cool because I was the only guy turning in something that was typed on computer paper. And I had to use a word processor for that, whose name I will never forget, WP6502. I loaded that sucker up many, many times, and it had a language for delineating things like paragraphs and all that was considerably more cryptic than HTML is today. I'd have killed for HTML back then, in fact. But it did get me used to doing some level of that. My father wrote his own code for his business because those machines didn't come with standard programs, that you would use today for doing anything in an office. Excuse me. So he wrote his own code for that, in BASIC for the most part. I learned some BASIC code as a result of that. Crypto 1701 says, I had an Apple II since 78. Cool. And his teachers would not let you use dot matrix. Well, the time I was doing it, it was so new that, they let you do it. They let me do it for several years, in fact, until better equipment came out. But in any case, so I really have never had my hands off of a computer since 1978. There's been some kind of computer in my home or in my hands. Even when I was an actor, I was involved in something that is totally gone now. But I have a good friend of mine who is working on it as a potential replacement for traditional social media because it would be totally distributed. So it would be impossible for anyone to shut you down or to censor you. But it was a network called FidoNet. FidoNet was made up of a whole bunch of online dial-up bulletin board systems around the world that had gotten together and said, let's share all of our users' posts among each other. And furthermore, let's break them down by what their interests are. For a number of years, largely during the production of Star Trek The Next Generation and into Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I was very, very, very heavily into FidoNet. I posted for hours every day. I mean, this predates the internet. This was the first international Star Trek forum was on FidoNet. We had hundreds of messages a day going around the world. In point of fact, I was once tapped. My sometimes a pseudo-producer, Marshall Presnell, was the primary moderator of that Star Trek group, Trek. And we had lurkers there. We had lurkers there from the Star Trek The Next Generation cast. One that astonished me at one point, absolutely astonished me. Because the first, what a shock, I used to review stuff. I used to review Star Trek The Next Generation when it was first coming out. And, the first and second season, kind of iffy at best, stumbled a lot. A few good ones in there, but, not that great for the most part. Then we got into the third season, and that's where it all turned around for Star Trek The Next Generation. And I wrote the words in there. This season of Star Trek is the finest season of Star Trek ever produced, because at that point I thought it was outdoing the original series by quite a ways. Well, at that point I was also an international courier between Chicago and Toronto. And I get up to Toronto one night, and I'm making my deliveries because the deal was you pick stuff up in Chicago, you walk it through customs, you deliver it that same night. So I'm making my deliveries, and I'm listening to the Canadian Broadcasting Company on the radio, and they're doing an interview with Sir Patrick Stewart. And out of his mouth come the words, "There are some fans who are saying that this is the finest season of Star Trek ever produced." And I just about went off the road. Patrick Stewart saying my words. I couldn't believe it. But he was not the only lurker that we had there. Patrick Stewart was there. Some other people I'm not sure I should talk about. If Marshall wants to come in sometimes and talk about it, he can. But we had a number of different lurkers, both cast and crew, who were on there, such that much later in life, I say to myself, gosh, I almost kind of wish I'd been kinder to them on some of the reviews. Let's see. Crypto 1701, you were a Fido hub in Dallas. I was a point. I ran a FidoNet point. Supercruise 63, and found, I just found a book from my Atari computer on how to write programs in Atari Basic. And found some of the big floppy disks. Made me feel old that you still had them. Yes, somewhere in my parents' home here, stored away, I believe, are the punch cards that my father used on that program that he was working on with the guy from when he got his doctorate. Somewhere around here are the punch cards. That's how long he was into it. Supercruise 63 says, I also have a Commodore 64 new in the box that my grandma never set up. Hey, happened to catch episode 5 of WandaVision? They were using Commodore 64s in that office. I got a huge kick out of that. My first personally owned computer was a Commodore 64. It was the way that I first used to connect up to FidoNet bulletin board systems. 10 go to 10. 1701 says, yes. Oh, yeah. Let's talk recursion, shall we? The go-to statement, the bane of every basic programmer's existence, the go-to statement. But I know I used to have a lot of fun with it when I was younger, do stuff like that. So, FidoNet I was into even while I was in Chicagoland as a fledgling actor and later into IT just generally. Spent way more time than I probably should have on it. And I was tapped ultimately by my sometimes a pseudo-producer, Marshall Presnell, who you see from time to time. Who is, by the way, who was at the time and still is in certain Star Trek circles known as the Echo Mugatu. The Mugatu being, an animal from Star Trek, the original series, alien life form. You will see in my end titles if you watch them go past. I credit the Mugatu partly for him and partly because my very first memory is of seeing the Mugatu attacking Kirk in Star Trek, the original series, in its first run. So I credit both him and just the fact that's the instant when I started being self-aware. Anyhow, so Chicago, I was into that long, probably after I necessarily should have been, but I was tapped to be a vice moderator of that Trek group because there were so many different messages constantly coming through that it was too much for Marshall. He couldn't handle it all. So he got several others of us to help him out. I have since known Marshall ever since then. The late 1980s, early 1990s, Marshall and I have been very good friends. The guy, by the way, is operating at near genius levels. He's really, really smart. If he ever comes in and watches this one again on demand, he's going to hear me wax poetical about him because he's a really, really smart individual. He's real smart, and he's been operating near as I can tell at about warp 10 the entire time that I've known him. I could never keep up that kind of energy and schedule, and didn't. One of the more interesting things about it was when I was going to school at College of DuPage. I also had a job at Best Buy. Now, today, of course, Best Buy has the Geek Squad. But back then, Best Buy sold a lot of computers by a company called Hewlett-Packard. And they sucked. Those Packard Bell. Sorry, Packard Bell. The Packard Bell computers just sucked. So many of those computers were returned that they decided they needed some kind of technician to check on them and find out whether or not there was something actually wrong with them. Because either they were complete crap, or you had a lot of people back then who didn't know the first thing about a computer. And, they just would get one and they'd, be plopping them down in a little technological dark continent, not a clue what they were doing with it. So they hired me to be the very first PC technician, the very first one in the country to ever be hired. I was initially on the Best Buy sales floor, and they knew I was, getting a degree in this thing. And they said, "Hey, you come here." And this is how little they knew what the hell to do with me, right? They had a storeroom at the front. They cut a hole in it to it be like, a hole in the wall where it was basically people who could come to me and, give me their computer, and it was returned and I could look at it and say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this most of the time. Or they might have small problems and things like that. But they didn't know what to do with me so much that they put me in a white lab coat, a stupid white lab coat. So I've got, the blue Best Buy shirt underneath and this stupid white lab coat. It was at a point where I remember at one point I was out on the sales floor and going through passing software or something, and somebody stopped me and asked about some software. And of course, as an employee, you always answer the questions at that time. So they asked me about some software, and I used to keep a pair of rubber gloves in the breast pocket of this stupid white lab coat. So talking about software, I get out the rubber gloves, and I start picking up the software, and he says, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, you can't be too careful about computer viruses." Whoosh, no idea that I was making a complete joke. Supercrew63 says, I wrote a program called Star Destroyer, a game where you typed in coordinates to blow up a star in BASIC. Cool. Crypto1701, enjoyed, but would have another commitment. Have fun. See you later. 1701. Hey, Jeanette, everything is well with me. I'm basically going through a bit of, right at the moment, you missed me getting really pissed about Gina Carano being canceled, and right now I'm just kind of going through and doing a bit of background about myself because it came up on Twitter. So I was into some early technologies right from 1977 on. I was into some pre-internet technologies in the early 1990s, and then I got my bachelor's degree in computer science from Northern Illinois University. And then it all really started to take off because at about the same time I was starting to go into a paying, more professional career, the internet was coming along. It was exactly the right time because the internet was starting to become inexpensive enough that the average business, not person, but the average business could afford what were called leased lines, that is, direct connected lines from them to the internet. These were still very, very low bandwidth. You were talking 56K, 128K bandwidth, not megabits, but kilobytes, megabytes with kilobytes. Very slow compared to today. But it was getting something that people could afford. So I got involved with a startup ISP, which were very, very common back then. It wasn't like, the modern times when basically it's either your cable company or maybe you've got a local ISP that's, a big name, a major player and things like that. Or these days, your phone company. But I got involved with a startup ISP. And I got to go around. We had a lot of different customers, and I got to go all over the Chicago metro area, setting things up. I did routers, I did switches, I did running cabling, I did all of it. I did server work. The ISP itself had 3 different data centers inside of Chicagoland that I worked in, that I put all of their equipment in, that I all the routing protocols and whatnot for. Learned a ton, did a lot, but my jump the shark moment came when I put 500 miles on my car without ever leaving the Chicago metro area. It was because we had so many different customers that were having issues, or I needed to do installations or support on something. I was zipping back and forth from one side of the metro area to the other with total abandon and no any kind of schedule, because it was just coming in that way. Call coming in, go here. Call coming in, go there. 500 miles on the car one day. And that was kind of my, jump the shark moment. In around there, beginning of the 1990s as well, as I was starting to go to school, or just before I went to school, I met my ex, and we got married. We had 2 beautiful children. And because of the fact that I'd kind of hit my, jump the shark moment, we decided to make a big move. And we moved to the Sioux City metro area, specifically North Sioux City, South Dakota. If you're not familiar with it, the way that Sioux City area works is there's North Sioux City, South Dakota, South Sioux City, Nebraska, and Sioux City, Iowa. And they all are around the convergence of the Missouri and Big Sioux rivers. It's 3 states in one corner. So I worked there for a number of years until I got divorced. And my ex moved with the kids back to Chicago. Unfortunately, because of the way the finances on that worked out, there was no way for me to get a job in Chicagoland that would allow me to both live and pay my various financial commitments that I had. So for a while, I stayed there in North Sioux City. Then I was able to find a job in Des Moines, and then I stayed there for about 10 years. The Des Moines job was such that I thought to myself, well, okay, I'm earning enough here to be able to scrape by. But at the same token, it's probably a place where if I were to lose a job, which did happen when we had the big crash in 2008, that I would probably be able to find another job relatively quickly. I otherwise could have gotten a job probably closer to Chicagoland, but it would have been a smaller town where finding another job if there was a problem would have been a much more difficult thing to do. So that gets me into the early 2000s, because I was divorced in 2004. And so I lived in Des Moines for about 10 years, did in fact lose a job, and a very good job, one of the best ones I've ever had. Very rewarding, and working for a company that was actually doing technology right. That's pretty odd. What you probably don't know is just how bad most of the back end for websites and financial services that you rely on actually are. They tend to be very cobbled together, very, okay, let's do this thing right now to make it work because we've got people down and money, we're losing money. Quick, do this thing over here. Okay, we'll come back and fix it later, and then you never do. And it's just putting Band-Aid upon Band-Aid upon Band-Aid. This company was doing it really right. I enjoyed working for them very much, but then the 2008 crash happened. At that point, I could not find another job because me and everybody else was out of work. However, I did find a job as an adjunct instructor at what I usually call on this show, the place that shall not be named. But I'll tell you what it was. It was the late unlamented ITT Technical Institute. Now, I want you to know that at no time while I was teaching, until the very last quarter, did I understand just how horrific ITT Tech's business practices were. When I discovered how horrific they were, I was not unhappy to see them can me. They'd done that to all of the full-time instructors because I got an adjunct position. Then I was hired on as a full-time instructor. Then for a while, I was the only full-time IT instructor, which made me the de facto chairman of that department. It is miserable. I enjoy teaching very much. I really do. I rather enjoy teaching. When the purely administrative side of it doesn't become insane, which is what it had become by then, which is why I knew just started to find out how bad their business practices were. Those people deserved to go under. I'm glad that they went under. Anyone who ever got a degree with them should be refunded every last penny they spent. Because one of the ways that these a-holes did business was they would do this. They would sign up their students for a loan that was with a company that was a sister company to ITT Tech. So essentially, they're paying each other. And it wasn't cheap that they were signing up for either. Oh, no. To get an associate's degree out of ITT Tech, you were going to run around $60K. Just completely insane. No, the one thing I can take away from that is, if you were at ITT Tech while I was there and I was teaching you, you got an education. You actually got an education, because I got in a lot of trouble with ITT Tech. I graded honestly, and that meant that since most of the students who were coming in couldn't read nor write nor perform the most basic math, I flunked them. Always, repeatedly if necessary. I flunked them and flunked them and flunked them. Generally speaking, in any given new quarter with a new batch of students, we get 80 or so in. By the time they graduated, there was maybe 8 left. The ones who could actually do the work are the ones that passed. I kept failing them and failing them and failing them. I tried hard to help them. I did all kinds of tutoring. But at the end of the day, if you can't read the textbook, you're screwed. If you don't know how to do math beyond your own 10 fingers, then doing binary mathematics and logic is going to be completely and utterly impossible for you. I would fail them, and I got in serious trouble with it. At one time, I was actually up for a promotion to a department chair at another ITT Tech, and it was turned down the moment they realized that I had been failing all these people because they made their money based on whether they had the butts in the seats who were paying for their loans. So if you failed too many of them, there was a huge temptation for instructors all the way up and down the line to falsify grades. And I know that that happened. I know that that happened. But I graded totally fairly. My grades were fair. If you did the work, if you were capable of doing the work, then you got your associate's degree. So my students, listen, I know that they say your ITT Tech degree is worthless, but I am here to tell you that if I taught you, it is not worthless. And you can have any prospective employer call me. I will be happy to tell them exactly what I just told you. I graded fairly. I failed 90% or more of the people that came into that program and got in a lot of trouble for it. Was under a lot of pressure constantly to falsify grades. So again, when they finally let me go, I was not even remotely sorry to see it happen. I suppose to my credit, I know that I had students, because I had the option of staying on as an adjunct instructor. But there was no way I could work for that place after finding out how bad their business practices were. But my students, they were cool. They asked. They tried to get the school to hire me back on full time. I didn't tell them why. I just said, well, I appreciate you wanting me to come by when I heard about it, but I can't. And I couldn't tell them why. I probably should have. Probably just should have come clean. I think I was probably under some kind of NDA that said I couldn't do stuff like that, but I probably should have. No, you guys need to leave. You need to get the hell out of here. These people suck. They're terrible. One of the worst businesses I've ever worked for. So after that, by the time that finally gave up the ghost, the market in Des Moines had been starting to open up again, and people were starting to go back to work. So I was able to get another job, and I stayed at that one basically until I was forced to quit. In 2017, I developed some significant physical issues that are very well treated, but what they mean, among other things, is I can't really hold down a normal job. If I do, any level of stress will interfere with my diabetes and cause my blood sugar to vary wildly. Like from extraordinarily and dangerously low to extraordinarily and dangerously high within only a couple of hours of each other. My own little come to Jesus moment was when I found myself, I awoke after passing out on my living room floor. And when I checked my blood sugar level, it was at 40. The healthy blood sugar level is 100. 40 is life-threatening. I very well might. At 40, you can just pass out and never wake up. So at that point, after getting all of my ducks in a row, I was able to apply for and ultimately get Social Security disability, which is what I'm on now. And then in and around there, I started a YouTube channel. I've been at this for several years now. Pardon me again. I have been at this for several years, more than the videos on this channel show. I had over 300 videos on a prior channel that was deleted for no reason that I can think of. Fortunately, I do have them all, but YouTube won't allow me to upload any of them. YouTube has an incredibly long memory. If you try uploading any of these videos that were on a channel that it has deleted, it won't let you. I'm looking, and I've been trying to do it for years now, trying to get all of my prior videos and the current ones I've got up on the Internet Archive, because I think for permanent storage, that's probably about the best you can do. They don't look like they're going to be coming down anytime soon. If anybody wants to help me by volunteering to put stuff up on the Internet Archive, let me know. I've only got about 300 or so videos that can do that. Some of them are a little bit embarrassing. If you really wanted to ever see it, you can watch my progression technologically from something that really rather sucked into what I've got now with lighting equipment, a good camera, and so forth. That's me. From my beginnings as a poor black child in Yankton, South Dakota, to where I am today. And along the way, picked up a lot of other interesting things. I do now live in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the house that I grew up in, for reasons that I don't usually go into. I'm not just living in my mother's basement. There are other reasons. But that's me. So if it ever comes up, I think maybe I'll pull that out as a clip, just because it did come up on Twitter, and I have no problem telling people about it. That's the story of my life so far. We'll continue to see how it goes. I have a sister who has, and she's 4 years younger than I am, who had several children, who now have children of their own. So while I am not a grandfather myself, my children have not yet had children. I am a grand uncle and grand to several grandnieces and nephews. So I guess I'm a grandpa-aged guy. At least YouTube keeps telling me that, because it keeps trying to show me ads for personal and sex sites that refer to grannies. Just as a complete aside here, when it comes to marketing, guys, even at my age, we don't like to think of ourselves as sleeping with grannies, or dating grannies. It's just bad marketing. At least use the word mature. But even then, we're not really, we're not really thinking ourselves as interesting thing. My late great acting guru, Dr. William Morgan, said he was not much older than I am. I feel like I'm 56. I mean, I know I look 56, but I feel like I'm 16. So, yeah, I know I'm not going to be dating any 16-year-olds, and I don't want to. My general rule of thumb is nobody under the age of my daughters. But, not grannies, guys. That's really, really bad marketing, You can show me some older ladies, but not calling them grannies. I don't know what goes into your brain. Jeanette's asking, have I heard of the Free State Project? Yes, I have. That's where basically a whole bunch of libertarians are trying to get together out in New Hampshire. I am extremely jaded about that. And that is because of the nitwits in Keene, New Hampshire. I used to keep up with them a bit. Younger guys, for the most part. Younger guys and gals. And total idiots. Just total idiots. They do things like get arrested for no good reason. And like a traffic stop. They get arrested because they refuse to identify themselves to the officer who stopped them. Now, here's something where it could just be, your traffic light's out, your tail light's out, and here's a warning. You were going a few miles over the speed limit. Here's a ticket. Here's a warning. But no, it wouldn't be that, because they would refuse to identify themselves. Let me throw this other thing up here real quick, my other card here. They'd refuse to identify themselves on the basis that they were free individuals and didn't have to do so. Well, then they'd get arrested and taken to jail. And then they'd appear before a judge, and they would fail to identify themselves or provide any identification the entire way through until they appeared before a judge. And then one of their buddies would be out in the seating area wearing a hat. And, any moron knows that you take off your hat in court. Any idiot knows this. But they'd have to be instructed to take off their hats, and then they'd refuse, and then the court would hold them in contempt, and they'd be arrested, and they'd be taken out, and they'd fail to identify themselves too. So all of these morons would be spending all their time sitting in jail for no reason at all. And they do this over and over and over again to the point where both law enforcement and the judge got utterly sick of them. Just absolute children and stupid. You got to learn to pick your battles. And they were raided more than once because, of course, all of them were using, illegal drugs. Just idiots, complete idiots who thought, they were doing the greatest work in the world libertarian-wise. Total morons, you guys. You're total idiots. And you soured me on the Free State Project forever. I know that there's other stuff going on and has been for some time in places other than Keene, but I'm sorry if you guys are going to be held up as some kind of paragons of virtue when you're actually paragons of stupidity. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Oh, and let's not forget the ladies. Okay, look, I understand. This whole notion about women being able to go topless is a nice thing to think about and occasionally do some activists for. But when it's all you're doing, when your basic thing as a libertarian woman is tits or get the fuck out, that's your whole thing. You have totally wrong. Your priorities are 100% wrong. Tits or get the fuck out is not the most important issue, pressing issue of our times. That's just stupid beyond words. So I watched those guys be complete morons for years. And I decided, no, I want nothing to do with it. And I understand they have a festival out there, an annual festival, where, as far as I know anyway, they have yet to actually be arrested. But there's so much illegal drug use going on out there that people tell me about that I'm like, I'm going to stay the hell away from that place. You guys may think that you're totally immune, but I guarantee you at some point, somebody's going to come raid the place, and then a bunch of you are going to jail. So the Free State Project is a very interesting idea, but I think its execution has been juvenile at best. And we're just waiting around for them to get arrested at one of these things that they have. I will not be going there, and I won't be moving to New Hampshire. It's just not happening. I don't know where you could go. The problem is the people who are really, really interested in doing activism for libertarianism are also young. And they're also kind of stupid as a result. They don't know, as I do, that if you're going to do this stuff, you need to pick your battles. You don't pick not taking off your damned hat in court as a battle. That's stupid. If you're dumb enough to wear it into a court in the first place, the moment the judge says, would you remove your hat? You say, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. And if you're stopped for something like a simple traffic violation and the cop says, can I see your driver's license? You hand them the driver's license, smile and say, I'm sorry, officer, was there something, did I do something? You don't get stupid. Those are not the battles you pick. You pick other battles, Tits or get the fuck out. Not a battle that you pick. There are a million other things going on that are far more important than all that. But these doofuses will pick their battles based on whether they take their hat on or off in a freaking courtroom. Just a bunch of idiots. Dalton says they have 100 of the 400 political offices now. Well, that's nice. That's nice. Maybe things have changed a little bit, but I'm sorry. Those children over at Keene have totally soured me on it. Totally soured me on it. If those guys in New Hampshire want to get my attention, you're going to have to get rid of those children. You're just going to have to get rid of them. Right now, they're all waiting to get busted the next time they have a pork fest. The next time that they have one of those, every single time, there's so much illegal drug use going on there that they're all risking getting busted. And I ain't going to go anywhere near that. As for me personally, I'm born and raised, and that's the other thing I didn't mention about me personally. When I was ages 5 to 15, I spent my time on my grandparents, parts of my summers on my grandparents' working cattle ranch in extremely rural South Dakota. If you want to know how rural it is, take a look at my video, A Trip to SYL Ranch, sort of. That'll give you an idea of just how rural it is. And the prairie's kind of in my bones. You can take the man out of the prairie, but you can't take the prairie out of the man. I hope to ultimately retire and frankly pass away there someday on a piece of ranch land that is staying in my family. But so for me, even moving beyond a certain point, I want to go back. I really am one of those few people who, unlike politicians who say, "Oh, I love my state," blah blah blah, and they're just mouthing the words. I actually do love South Dakota. I consider myself a South Dakotan living abroad in Nebraska, but I will never be too far away from the prairie because it's in my bones. I can't get it out. Probably the last generation of my family that feels that way, but I will be there till I die. That's my feeling about the Free State Project. Maybe they're doing some other good work now, but they soured me completely with the children in the Free Keene project and Free Keene area, and screw them. If you guys want anybody to take you seriously, you're going to have to get rid of those stupid, stupid children who will pick battles that make no damned sense. Kick them out. Be gone with them. Distance yourself from them, because they're making you look very, very bad, such that even a libertarian like myself wants nothing to do with the project because of those Free Keene nitwits. So, that's kind of my thought about that, I guess. Looks like it's been about an hour and a half, and I've found in the past that having something less than 3 hours as a stream is maybe a little more approachable to people who might want to watch this later on demand. So I think that I will probably drop it off about here right now. I guess that would be all that I have to say about that. I would love to keep this conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. That's all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!